Well, hey everybody, this is Chris DeFiorio with Keys to the Shop, and welcome to another edition of Shift Break. Today's episode is brought to you by La Marzocco. They have been providing espresso machines for the world's best coffee bars for nearly 100 years, making espresso machines by hand in Florence all that time. Quality, dependability, we call their machines the workhorse of the cafe, and innovation are some of the things that are hallmarks of La Marzocco. Check them out at lamarzocco.usa.com and look at what they have to offer. A machine for every type of cafe out there, from a lot of automation to very little automation and everywhere in between. Innovations like the KB90 with the straight-in locking portafilters. You've got the Linea Classic and the Linea PB, one of my personal favorites, with all of the technology for supreme control over the shot, but also that classic style, and many other variations on espresso equipment. Grinders like the Swan grinder that debuted in SCA this past week, which was really fun to watch and very innovative in how it controls static. These are coffee bar problems solved through innovation in a company dedicated to their customer success. So if you're looking for a new espresso machine for your cafes, or you want to start out with the right equipment for your first coffee shop, go ahead and reach out to La Marzocco, info@lamarzocco.usa.com. Talk to one of the salespeople and get the right machine for you. Again, check them out at lamarzocco.usa.com. One of the backbones of the industry is not huge. It is small. In fact, it's small wares. Small wares like pitchers, shot glasses, whisks, knock boxes, you name it. All of the little things that if they weren't there, you would notice. But since they are there, we don't. And when they don't work, we really notice it. But that's why Rattleware is so popular. Rattleware.com is a place you should visit for smallware needs, because they provide you smallwares that are durable and just work for the coffee bar. And that's a huge thing. It's very simple, and that simplicity is what makes them a great option for you in your smallware needs. So go to rattleware.com and check out what they have to offer, and let them help you with the backbone of your business in smallwares. Rattleware.com. Okay, everybody. Well, today we are still on this train of thoughts from the SCA Expo in Chicago. It was amazing, and I have a couple of thoughts around the cafe. And my thought here is this. It is that one of the best things that we can do for people who are impacted by us across the supply chain, upstream, downstream, tangentially, ripple effect, butterfly effect, dominoes, use your metaphor here to talk about how we're connected. One of the best things that you can do is not necessarily the first thing that you would think of to do. Business is one of those things that helps when it's good. Running a great business, running a successful and profitable, excellent coffee shop is one of the best things that you can do to help the people who depend on the coffee shop for their livelihood. You just take it back, roaster, importer, farmer. Everybody relies on those of us in the cafe to do a fantastic job. And what do we do with our time and energy and efforts, our best energy and efforts? We supplement our education not with how we can do the best job possible with the things that we do every day, but how can we add a depth of knowledge to our coffee knowledge arsenal of areas in the coffee value chain that are not our specialty. And if I'm being honest, it's really frustrating to watch coffee shop owners and brands investing so heavily into education about processes and other areas of the business of coffee as a huge investment point, but cannot bring themselves to fix the paper towel dispenser in their bathroom. Can we just think about that for a second and imagine that this was the other way around, that the farmer decided that they wanted to learn all about interior design for cafes, didn't have a cafe, by the way, but wanted to learn all about it because that's how they're going to round out their education as a farmer. They're going to learn how to open a coffee shop, but they're never going to open a coffee shop. Now, I'm not saying that you can't learn about farming and all that goes into the product because you represent some of that, right? But if it meant that the farmer therefore had their processing equipment in disarray, and that the product that they were producing was less than it could be because they were distracted by the constant accumulation of information that's inconsequential, relatively speaking, to the product that is what we all rely on them for, then it would, again, back to that chain reaction, it would have a negative impact. And we see this with cafes, but in reverse. Customers have a multi-sensory experience in the coffee shop, and it's not just about the education that you have about the backstory of coffee and the science and all of this other stuff, as fascinating as that is and as fun as it is. Sometimes it amounts to a party trick in terms of what is important in your coffee shop. The customers' tastes and their values for what mean a lot to them are actually pretty simple, but we refuse to pay attention to the fine points of our cafes. We will rather open a second or third or fourth cafe rather than address the elephant in the room, which isn't as big as an elephant. And again, sometimes it's only the fact that a paper towel dispenser is broken, or there are parts of, a bench that have splinters in it because it's so old, and customers have sometimes, got splinters on it. There's, parts of your cafe that just smell super weird. And things are kind of becoming a little bit embarrassing, but we're so passionate about the coffee and everything else. It's almost like we're trying to make up for our lack of operational excellence with depth of knowledge of coffee as though that excuses it. And that's why I'm saying minding our own business is one of the things we can do to help other people with their businesses. If you're a coffee shop owner, an operator, a manager, or a trainer, the product that you produce is specifically the people and the work they do with the product. Now, that does require some knowledge, again, of the coffee itself. But like I said, customers don't have very fancy requirements for why they would keep coming back to your coffee shop over and over again and continuing to buy lots and lots of coffee. Proving my point is the fact that for most coffee shops, even some of the highest end coffee shops, they still have to have that medium roast coffee or that dark roast coffee or that blend because customers just love it. And the customer, again, has to be convinced and basically preached to and coerced into taking on some of the coffees that we are excited about, because our obsession is not so much the cafe or even serving our guests. Our obsession is about serving our obsession. And if we're going to be operators, in a way, we have to reverse that, or at the very least, balance it out. And so there is a bit of a hypocrisy when we twist ourselves into knots talking about how we want to have a fair and equitable value chain in coffee and make sure that the farmers are taken care of. But we refuse to take care of our part of this whole thing, which in turn creates a way more stable demand for coffee that in turn creates more stable purchasing for farmers, which that is kind of the point, isn't it? We don't see our part to play here because we imagine that it's out there. It's secret, hidden knowledge that we've got to access somehow, and more books on the science of coffee, agronomy, et cetera, is the answer. Again, if you have a cafe where you have invested more money in coffee books than on fixing your cafe and its operational excellence, or on following through with your promises for raises for your baristas and generous compensation, of resourcing your staff to give great hospitality and service, and helping them in their growth as operators of the coffee bar, representing the product to the customer consistently, then we have to reverse that. And I dream of the day where maybe there's a moratorium of like 1 year for us to just put our heads down and make what we are directly responsible for better, and stop getting in other people's business and stop worrying so much that we don't have enough information. Chances are we do have enough information right now, right? We know how to make good coffee. We know what customers are looking for. It's just executing on it. And if there's any innovation that is going to happen, it's the innovation not of adding things. Maybe it's the innovation of taking things away. taking away distractions and focusing on those little areas that will make customers trust us more. People don't trust us because we're experts. People trust us because we put action to our values in serving them coffee in an environment where they feel seen and cared for in all of the senses, not just taste. And so that's just been rolling around in my mind. If you want to care for the farmer, care for your coffee shop, and make sure that things are well in place and that there's an operation of integrity happening before we start adding, and not saying you can't help in other ways, but let's do first things first. Let's create priority for those areas that are directly our responsibility, our craft, the craft of operations, as we've said previously, and allow farmers the craft of farming coffee. And we can communicate one to the other, right? And that's fine. And there is a lot to be gained by having dialogue between cafes and farmers or roasters and farmers. One can learn from the other and become better as a result. But I worry, again, that we are so distracted by an obsession that in order to be a great coffee shop owner and operator, we need to accumulate so much knowledge about some other area of the industry besides our own that it leaves the primary thing as a distant second. So that's what I'm thinking these days about how we can affect the most change and become an industry where we trust that we're all working well within our lanes. And then when we do have our communication one to the other, we can do so knowing that it's done with this integrity intact and not some kind of a subconscious way to deal with the dysfunction of the thing that should be our primary focus to make functional. And so I hope that makes sense. Let me know what you think. And as always, I'm really interested in your thoughts. You can go ahead and post those on Instagram. Follow us on Instagram at Keys to the Shop, and also on YouTube at Keys to the Shop. We're trying to put up more video content. And don't forget to subscribe. So and that is it. Thanks, everybody. And I'll see you here next week on another edition of Shift Break. From Keys to the Shop.